Welcome back to Wonder of Faith. As always, I'm Anthony Bush, and today we're going to be moving right along with our topics. So we finally finished the doctrine of the heart, of love. So we're 1/4 of the way through the actual orders themselves. And now for the next 4 videos, we're going to be focusing on the importance of doctrine. Now, I'm really excited to talk about this particular topic and virtue because it's one that can be considered unique to the Catholic tradition. We can all learn to love others, we can all find wisdom or learn about ourselves, but it's through doctrine that we understand the Catholic position, the importance of obedience, and what it means to follow a faith to its fullness. I think in the modern age we forget that obedience is not something to be shirked away from. Everyone wants to think for themselves, everyone wants to make their own way forward, and individualism is okay to an extent, but in the end, if there is one truth, then it makes sense that there is one way forward. There is to be a structure that defends the truth and makes sure that it's being followed absolutely. And in obedience and in doctrine, we find the ability for truth to be kept preserved. Because it's so easy for changing sentiments and changing cultures to cause the truth as we know it to be muddled or forgotten. And through doctrine, we're able to keep it preserved and make sure that it's remembered through the ages. And it's been that way since Pentecost, since the apostles first received the Holy Spirit and became bishops of the church, all the way down to now through apostolic succession, where our current bishops are the successors of the first apostles. So getting right into it, we're going to read the opener for the Order of Doctrine here in the Wondrous Orders. Link below if you want to get it on Amazon. The Order of Doctrine. Live by the teachings of the Holy Church and turn not away from your duty to the decrees of Christ. So as Catholics, we do have a duty to constantly live according to the Church's values. You know, there are people out there, I know you hear about it a lot, I'm sure, that pick and choose what they want to follow. And that's just not the way to be Catholic. Catholic means to accept what the Church teaches. You may not understand it for the time being, but you're called to come to understand the reasoning and see why the Church teaches what it teaches. Because they're not just a bunch of blind decrees that the Church has put out through the years. There's a system of morality, and there is a system and reasoning as to why we believe and profess what we profess. So by all means, you're allowed to struggle with it, to not completely accept it right away. But in the end, you have to come to understand and bring yourself into the mindset of the Church to be completely in communion with it, and I think to live a fruitful life in understanding, which is very important. Faith must be solidified through order in which all the faithful can follow. The power of doctrine is not only belief in the concrete, but also the reasoning of why there is belief and how faith can better pertain to the world. It is the business of doctrine to provide freedom from confusion in the ways and truths of the Church. The Lord has instilled doctrine through the Holy Bible and the apostolic succession of the first followers of Christ. Let this tradition continue forever and further explore the doctrines of faith and her precepts. So, I think it's important to mention now the relationship in the Church that's the faith and reason relationship. The Church professes that faith alone is insufficient and reason alone are insufficient because they are both represent extremes that can lead a person away from what is true. But when both are fully practiced and work together, faith and reason can form a soul to finding truth as it is through an exploratory process, through coming to understand, by deepening one's love and relationship with God, and just learning about the faith and its precepts in general. All these things come together to create a faith that is strong, well-balanced, and fruitful for the person. So it's good to keep that in mind when we talk about doctrine going forward. Doctrine-wise, there are different areas where the Church gets its ideas from. One, of course, is the Bible. That's the first place usually one looks to see how Jesus taught and the apostles after through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit and even the Old Testament. And then we take into account apostolic succession through the tradition. So it's easy to understand that the Bible has a finite beginning and end. It is a certain amount of pages. It does not go on forever. And therefore, it is incapable of talking up front about the issues that we may face today. It was written in time periods that are very different from the current day, and so it takes an authority to be able to not just interpret, but use the biblical truth to talk about modern problems. That's where tradition comes in. The magisterium, which is the teaching authority of the church, which includes the Pope and all the bishops and cardinals that accompany him, they pray and they discern, they reason, and then in the end they come to a decision that fits within the Catholic moral structure. So it takes a lot of deliberation and scholasticism in order for these ideas to be brought to fruition, because someone may not be able to decide truth right away. It must be explored. It must be dug out like an archaeological dig. You have to dig slowly and surely until the whole thing's revealed. And so that's the church's process. To be more specific, in the Holy See or Vatican, where the Pope is, there's an institution called the Roman Curia. And it is the job of the Curia to carry out the church's everyday functions at the top level. And one of these is the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. And through this congregation, the church is able to formulate and bring forth documents and resources to help the truth to always be preserved and be let known to the world. Because the church does see itself as the treasury of truth, seen and unseen. This doesn't mean that it sees itself as the primary force for like scientific truth, but when it comes to ultimate truth, like the truth of God's nature, of His will, and the philosophical understandings of nature, the church sees itself as a primary source. And these higher truths are a different story from observational truth, so to speak. To say that the American flag is red, white, and blue is true. It is indisputable. But this truth is a lower truth because it doesn't have much impact on the life of a person or the dignity of a person. But talking about truths as to why humans exist, what their dignity implies, these are higher truths that are more important and more valuable when discussing reality as a whole. And it is these types of truths that the church deals with mostly. Other than that, the church partners with scientific institutions and modern universities to come to know scientific truth more perfectly. The church loves science. It's by no means against the scientific method, and it employs it at any point it can in order to be as closely aligned to the truth as possible. So with all this in mind, I've spilled out a lot there, but with all this in mind, we're going to move into the first doctrine for the section of doctrine, the order of doctrine, and that is the doctrine of academic excellence. The importance of being a learned person, being someone who's engaged academically and educationally, even as adults, even if you're out of school, it's still important to learn and constantly come to understand and see truth in a better, more perfect way. So getting right into the doctrine of academic excellence, it states, to understand the Holy Word and find the ability to express the truth of the Church wholly, it is necessary to learn and grow academically in order to serve the Lord fully. So, academia is very important, whether it's theological or not. It allows ideas to be made more perfect and allows the human understanding of life in general in all aspects to be more perfect. And that's very important. And through this academic process, we can also learn to seek out truth in the best and most efficient way possible. I know at university myself, I've learned so much in the philosophy department about how to write papers, how to find resources and find citations and work that's important, that's been validated to be good work, and making sure that there's a professional understanding of academia. And that applies to the church too. The church's academic tradition is vast and it is prestigious. It has its own structure to make sure that the ideas being spread are validated and are peer-reviewed and are not subpar. So with that in mind, it's important to keep an academic insight, no matter what you do. If you aren't didn't even go to college, or if you're post-college, either way, it's important to every person to have some understanding of being able to seek out truth and research what matters to you, including the Catholic faith. So number one, study well and often in order to better the self. So pretty straightforward. We want to make sure that we continue to study and grow in knowledge so that we can better serve God and the people around us. Number two, offer help to others so that they may succeed too. So like in heart, if we are going to have hope, if we're going to be loving, we have to show others how to be loving as well. We have to show others how to be academically astute. We always have to see ourselves as a possible example to others, no matter what we do. Number three, may all endeavors in academics be treated with equal importance. So, specifically in school, like if you have all these subjects, English, science, math, all of them are important to make a well-rounded individual. We all go through schooling. And so it's not fair to say, I'm just going to be a scientist. Let's not worry about literature. That doesn't make any sense, because well-roundedness is very important. Even if you never read a book again, or that's not your job, it's important to understand the basic principles of literature or philosophy, or even calculus if you're not a math major. All these things can help us to become better learned and help us in some way, even if it's not in the primary role that our life has. Number four, do homework to the best of your God-given ability. So if you're in school now, of course, do what you're supposed to do. Your job is to be a student, and that includes doing work outside of class. And if you're not in school, then that means if you're on an academic endeavor, don't just put time in when you feel like it, but work at it and practice and become better, because it's only through that endurance that you'll get anywhere. Number five, seek knowledge for the understanding of studies and not for personal vanity. So we don't study just to be a know-it-all. We study because we want to truly know more and better understand reality as God has given it to us. And I think that's important to remember, that we learn not for our own gain, our selfish gain, but for the gain of society and for the gain of our families and all those who depend on us. Number six, give thanks to the Lord for the gift of intelligence. And this is important. We all are intelligent in our own way, whether we're good with tools or we're good with memorization or we're good with creativity. It's all a type of intelligence, and it's a gift. And so no matter what we're good at, we have to thank God for giving us the opportunity to flourish, because not only has He given us life, but He's given us the ability to flourish and make something of ourselves. And that's a beautiful thing that we should never forget. Number seven, be the best student possible for God, family, and self. So like I said, we don't just do it for ourselves or others even, but for God too, because we use the gifts He gave us. And by using them, we glorify His name and His work that He did to make us who we are. Number eight, do not be afraid to ask for help from teachers, parents, and fellow seekers of knowledge. So if we truly want to learn all we can, we cannot shy away from others' help. We cannot do it all by ourselves. There are people, especially in academia, who are professionally taught and have been instructed to teach and to instruct others in knowledge. And so how can we deny them the ability to help us when that is their God-given ability? And so we should never be so prideful that we want to do it all on our own, because there are always people there to help, whether it's family members or professionals. They're there to help us. I think even in self-help books or in online college courses, there's always an authority you can talk to just make sure you understand something, even if you're not talking to them face to face. So there's always a help from another within any academic pursuit that you have. Number 9, never look at yourself as a privileged student in regard to others you're learning with. So there's always going to be the smart people in class or those who do better than you. I mean, pretty much there's someone out there that you think is more knowledgeable than you in something, or just maybe better at studying in general. And that's perfectly normal. It doesn't mean you're less than. It means your gifts are elsewhere. We should be happy for those people who can perform well and better than us, because we need those people to do their jobs while we do our jobs. So never feel less than, or like you have to live up to another person's standards because they're better at you than something. Number 10, do not feel worthless because of a lack of knowledge, but grow. So by whining because we're not learning fast enough is not going to do any good. The only thing we can do is try harder, be more perseverant, and make ourselves a more learned person. Only by action is it going to get any better. And so we have to be willing to put in the action and time to do so. Number 11, do not obsess over academics to where it damages the state of the orders and soul. So academics are important, but they should not supersede wisdom or heart or passion. There has to be equilibrium, and we're going to talk about this later as well. But if we're learning so much that we're letting life pass us by, or we're forgetting our responsibilities to our family or even to God, then it's time to step back. Because to obsess over something, to let it consume you, is never good, including education, which is good overall. Too much of anything is bad. And so just be careful and evaluate your life to make sure you're not putting too much time into one thing, including knowledge or learning in general. Number 12, do not hinder your own personal ability in order to appease society. There are some people out there, I've met them, who pretend to be dumber than they are so that they can fit into the societal group. And to me, this is one of the greatest of sins possible, to pretend to be something you're not, to make yourself look lesser than you are. And that's a sad thing. You should never hide your gifts and talents just because a group doesn't appreciate them. To flourish, to shine as a gifted person as you are, is the greatest thing you can do in the eyes of God, in the eyes of those who see you for who you are. And so you should never hide your gifts because someone else thinks that you don't fit in because you're too smart or something like that. The best thing you can do is find people who do appreciate your gifts instead of just settling for those who don't. So that brings us to the end, to the doctrine of academic excellence. I'm so excited we've gotten into doctrine. It's one of my favorite topics, if you haven't noticed. We've reached the end of the video. As always, leave a like, leave a comment if you want to question me about something. And I'll see you in the next video. May God be with you and bless you. Have a good one.